Welcome. Thank you to everyone who's joining us from home, from all over the country. A very warm welcome to the annual national ceremony to mark International Conscientious Objectors Day 2020. Today, we remember all those who have refused to bear arms and participate in war throughout history and today. Every year, on May the 15th, we remember those who have established and are maintaining the right to refuse to kill. Hundreds of people across the world are imprisoned or forced to flee their home countries for refusing to join the armed forces. On May the 15th, we stand in solidarity with them, as well as celebrating the memory of all those throughout history who have resisted conscription. My name's Karen Robinson. I'm the campaign worker for a peace organisation called Conscience is for Peace, Not War. One of 12 organisations who've been meeting regularly over the last year to plan this day. I'm also here as a granddaughter and daughter. My grandfather was a conscientious objector in the Second World War. He did farming work during the war. My father was later a conscientious objector to national service after the war. He and my mother were youth workers with the Quakers in the East End of London as part of his alternative service. This is a photo of my grandfather, the little boy, is my father. We gather together to mark International Conscientious Objectors Day at a very painful time, when 33,614 people have died from COVID-19 in the UK alone, and with many countries in the world still to face the peak of the virus. We would normally be gathering next to the Conscientious Objectors Commemorative Stone in Tavistock Square in London to mark this special day. This year we can't. I know many people will be missing the chance to see old friends and new in person. Although different from the usual physical ceremony, we hope that this online ceremony will also feel familiar too. Whether you've attended the ceremony many times before, or like me, are attending for the first time, a big welcome. And an extra special welcome to Donald Saunders, who is attending the online ceremony today. Donald is 95 and was a conscientious objector in the Second World War. Donald is currently self-isolating at home and regularly promotes peace campaigns on social media. During the ceremony, you will see photos of Tavistock Square in London. They have been taken during the lockdown. This year, we've created a new webpage, especially for International Conscientious Objectors Day. It can be found at www.co-a.org. This is the first time we've run the event online. Please bear with us if there are technical issues. And if for any reason you lose us, please look at www.co-a.org and on social media for updates on how to join us again. If you're tweeting about the day, we invite you to use the hashtag CODay2020. At the annual ceremony in recent years, we have focused especially on conscientious during the First World War. This year, the planning group decided to focus on conscientious objection during the Second World War and to seek an international speaker who could tell us about conscientious objection to conscription in their country today. First, we are going to hear from Michael Mears. Michael is an actor and wonderful friend of the peace movement. He's going to present a performance piece based on testimonies from the Second World War Conscientious.
In 1939, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain stood before the House to announce the return of military conscription. He then went on to say this. In 1916, I had the advantage of sitting on a tribunal assessing conscientious objectors, and discovered then what was possible and what was futile. With this experience behind me, I am proposing to the House that the new law recognise 3 categories of conscientious objector. It often happens that those who hold the most extreme opinions hold them with the greatest tenacity. We learned something about this in the Great War, and we found that it was both useless and an exasperating waste of time and effort to attempt to force such people to act in a manner which was contrary to their principles. The absolutist COs of the First World War had therefore made absolute opposition to any kind of war effort a generally acceptable position by the time of the Second War. However unpopular that stand remained. In the First World War, there were around 20,000 conscientious objectors, but in the period covering the Second World War, there were just over 62,000 registered COs, including about 1,000 women. It would be wrong, though, to paint too rosy a picture of how COs were treated in the Second World War. They still faced prison sentences, and about 6,500, including 500 women, did spend some time in prison, out of whom 1,000 were court-martialed and sentenced to military prison. And there were still some cases of harsh treatment. The words of John Radford, a conscientious objector at Dingle Vale Detention Centre near Liverpool. We were put in solitary confinement for refusing to work. In the middle of the night, we were woken and told again we had to work. I refused. On Monday morning, after breakfast, which was just 1 slice of bread, about 6 regimental police came to try and take 3 of us to work. We refused and were beaten up on the spot and then dragged to the butcher's shop and ordered to clear up the blood and mess on the floor. We still refused and were then given another beating up. But we stuck it out and were taken back after the hottest half hour I have ever known. After that, night after night, I was woken every 2 hours and marched around the yard. And every time I fell, the guard kicked me to my feet again. Eventually, after a week of this, I gave in. I think it's nearly broken my heart. I've never felt so unhappy in my life. People are trying to cheer me up. The Padre says I can do more good spreading the gospel in the Royal Army Medical Corps than dying on bread and water. The words of Dennis Waters, a student at University College London, sent to join the non-combatant corps against his will. Myself and 3 others refused to put on a uniform. And then one morning, our sergeant, Maloney, an ex-wrestler, decided he'd had enough. He went into the room next door, and I heard him bawling and shouting, heard the sound of blows. He then appeared in my room and went through the same routine with me. I felt rage, but I knew that if I lifted a finger against him, I'd be in deep trouble. Then he went off and did the same thing to the man in the next room. By merciful providence, we had a visit very shortly afterwards from the orderly officer, a decent man, and I let it all rip. Sergeant Maloney was court-martialed, were eventually acquitted on all charges. I was court-martialed 3 times for disobeying orders and sentenced to 28 days, 56 days, and 3 months, before eventually being released to work on the land. A Second World War CO, who I've had the privilege of meeting, is Don Sutherland of Lincoln, now 101 years old. He worked on the land as a CO, but in a rather special community, one of the Lincolnshire Pacifist farming communities. Having been sacked from his office job because of his stand, he applied to work in one of these farm communities, believing that that would not compromise his principles.
Although I was initially refused because of my physique, I applied again, and as it was now sugar beet season, I was accepted. I arrived at Holton-cum-Beckering Farm in Lincolnshire, where I would live for the next 20 years. The people working with me were from all walks of life, but all were there because of their conviction that war was wrong. As a community, we all lived together, simply, in 2 separate houses. The days were long, though, starting at 7 a.m. and continuing until dusk. Life was spent outdoors in all weathers, and the work, well, it was very physically demanding. As another CO there said, those of us who hadn't been brought up on a farm learnt very painfully that 7 stone weaklings had a long way to go. But as time passed, I went on to gain strength and develop many and varied skills. I enjoyed working and living within the community. It was a satisfying and healthy lifestyle. I learnt a great deal from the local farmers, and most importantly, I was living with like-minded people who were also good companions, all convinced of the futility of war, whether it be on religious, political, philosophical, or ethical grounds.
At the farm, there was a farmer on hand to advise and consult with, and this farmer's name was John Brocklesby, a cousin of Bert Brocklesby, no less, one of the Richmond 16 group of COs in the First World War who was sent to France and sentenced to death, a sentence later commuted to 10 years penal servitude. So it was that 2 Brocklesby cousins played an important role in the story of conscientious objection in both world wars. But let's not forget that there were conscientious objectors on the other side of the war too, and those under the Nazis suffered far harsher punishments for their beliefs. Franz Jägerstätter is perhaps one of the most well-known, the subject of a recent film by Terence Malick called A Hidden Life, highly recommended. When Franz refused to take
The military oath of unconditional obedience to Hitler,
he was challenged by his attorney that other Catholics were serving in the army. I can only act on my own conscience. I do not judge anyone. I can only judge myself. I would not exchange my small, dirty cell for a king's palace if I was required to give up even a small part of my faith.
Thank you so much, Michael. Singer-songwriter Sue Gilmurray is now going to sing a song called The Ones Who Said No.
Ask people what are their hopes for the future. Likelihood is they will say they want peace. Sadly deplore all the world's many conflicts. Look for a time when they finally cease. Yet these same people will talk of past glories, praise our brave armies with pride all aglow. Lovers of peace, praising fighters of battles. Never a word for the ones who said no. Never a word for the ones who said no. When the call comes from their king and their country, most will relinquish the power to choose. High-sounding words urge them on towards duty. Few are the people who dare to refuse. Yes, it takes courage to march into battle. Go where authority tells you to go. Whether as butchers or lambs to the slaughter, courage no less had the ones who said no. Courage no less had the ones who said no. Scorned and despised in a culture of warfare, in many lands they are suffering still. Branded as worthless, as cowards, as traitors, punished for simply refusing to kill. Proud politicians and posturing generals stand on their dunghills and mightily crow. If they were stripped of their plumage, we'd see them shamed by the fate of the ones who said no. Shamed by the fate of the ones who said no. Ask people what are their hopes for the future. Likelihood is they will say they want peace. Yet in their faith upon weapons and armies, even as damage and danger increase, look back to those who have dared to be different. Over the world let their clear courage flow. Armies unarmed, let it swell into millions. Cry yes to peace with the ones who said no. Cry yes to peace with the ones who said no. Ones who said no. Cry yes to peace with the ones who said no.
Thank you so much, Sue. I'm now very happy to introduce Niat Hailemariam. Niat is from the Network of Eritrean Women, an organisation that advocates for human rights for Eritreans in the diaspora and Eritrea. She's going to speak to us about military service in Eritrea, which is compulsory for both men and women.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Niat Hailemariam, and I'm a representative of the Network of Eritrean Women, which is an organization that advocates for human rights, especially women's rights for Eritreans in home and in the diaspora. As some of you may know, Eritrea has been a one-party dictatorial regime for the past 26 years. It's a country where everyone from the age of 16 is in mandatory military service. There are many Eritreans who, for moral or religious reasons, have refused to join the military. Their objection has caused them to flee, and some of them have been imprisoned indefinitely for years and years in metal shipping containers. Many have died, and some have developed respiratory and skin disorders. Some have missed their birthdays, graduations, weddings. They have friends and family who miss them dearly. Today and the many other days, we remember conscientious objectors all over the world. We remember them and fight for their freedom. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Niat. Thank you. Paul Steele is now going to sing a song, If There's a War On, Don't You Go, written by John Murphy of the Woodpickers.
If there's a war on, don't you go. Telephone your unknown foe. We won't be fighting you this time. Me and my friends will stay behind while we sing this song to you, so the chance to stay home too. If we don't meet on that day, there's nothing the history books can say. So tell the man who called you up, tell the man he's out of luck. People staying home this time, we're not all completely blind. If there's a war on, don't you go. Let the leaders steal the show. If they believe that the cause is right, we'll let them be the ones to fight. We wonder who the enemy are, someone near or someone far. It's that the men who want to rule, the kids we voted for at school. Which makes me ask the reason why they send us out to die. They say the weakness grown in man, there's greed for power to command. If there's a war on, don't you go. Just stay home, just say no. And maybe then they'll realize we don't believe their dreadful lies.
Thanks ever so much, Paul. Although we couldn't gather at the Conscientious Objectors Commemorative Stone in Tavistock Square today, a member of the Peace Pledge Union was able to place a flower on our behalf. Now, Bill Hetherington, Sheila Triggs, and Paul Steele are going to read out the names of conscientious objectors from all over the world and all periods of history.
Algeria. Francois Berriot, who was imprisoned in 1965. Angola, Emmanuel Matondo, a recent conscientious objector. Argentina, Christian LaSalle, one of 5 who made a public presentation of conscientious objection in August 1993. Armenia, Niat Chefena, imprisoned for 3 years in 2000. Armenia, Nagorno-Karabakh, Oleg Afanasyan, who was imprisoned for 4 years in 2005. Australia, Charles Edward Martin, imprisoned in 1970. Austria, Joseph Moyers, imprisoned 5 years as a disobedient soldier in the First World War. Austria at the time of the Anschluss. Franz Jägerstätter, who was beheaded in Berlin on the 9th of August 1943. Austria post-1945, Christian Schwarz, who was refused recognition as a CO in 1989. Azerbaijan, Samir Husseinov, who was imprisoned in 2007. Belarus, Valentin Gulai, who objected in 2000. Belgium, Jean van Heerden, who was imprisoned in 1950. Bermuda, Rod Eidrit Sterling, who was finally recognized by the Court of Appeal in 1996. Britain, Andrew Henderson, who was imprisoned in 1916, but then died in the influenza epidemic in November 1918. Bulgaria, Kostadin Angelov Kalmarkov, who was imprisoned in 1986. Canada, R.D. Brooks, who was imprisoned for 8 months in 1946. Chile, Javier Garata, who was publicly declared a CO in the early 2000s. China, Zhu Xiaotong, who was arrested for publicly burning his military uniform in 1989. Colombia, Soy Diego Carafonera, who was a first objector in 1993. Croatia, Tibomir Campanello, who objected in 1999. Cyprus, Greek part, Theokaris Theokaridis, who was imprisoned for 2 months in 1991. Cyprus, the Turkish part, Murat Kanatli, who was imprisoned for 10 days in 2014. The old Czechoslovakia, Tamaris Kirkernuk, who was imprisoned in 1986. Denmark, Laurits Larsen, who refused in 1962. Egypt, Michael Nabil Sanad, who was the first recorded CO, imprisoned for 3 years on the 11th of April 2011 for insulting the military. Eritrea, Lagardu Hailemariam, who has been in prison continuously since 1994. Finland, Kai Vaininen, who was a total resistor in the 1990s. France, Louis Lequan, who was a pioneer CO, imprisoned in 1917. Georgia, Kakabi Pilashvili, who was imprisoned 16 months in 1996.
Germany, August Dickmann, executed Sachsenhausen, 15th of September 1939. Germany East, Gunther Fritsch, imprisoned 1965. Germany West, Christoph Bosenwein, imprisoned 1986. Greece, Michaelis Maragkakis, imprisoned 26 months in 1988. Hungary, Barna Sontos, imprisoned 1986. Isle of Man, Harold Lilly, imprisoned 1916. Israel, Joseph Chabez, imprisoned 3 weeks, 1949. Israel Druze, Salman Salameh, in military detention, 2002. Italy, Pietro Pina, pioneer conscientious objector, imprisoned 1949. Japan, Shuji Hirayama, attempted to refuse orders, World War II. Kazakhstan, Roman Greco, 6 months imprisonment, 1994. Korea South, Chang Sik Kim, brutally beaten over 90 days, then 3 years in prison, 1974. Kyrgyzstan, Dmitry Shukov, detained in psychiatric hospital, 2001. Latvia, Romans Nero, objected in the year 2000. Lithuania, Karolis Podėnas, imprisoned several long terms from 1936. Netherlands, Jacob Finhair, imprisoned 3 years, 1950. New Caledonia, Gilbert Bialim Moa, imprisoned 4 months before recognition in 1989. New Zealand, Garth Ballantyne, transported to Britain, then France, sentenced to 5 years imprisonment and mistreated, 1917. Norway, Niels Mitsand, imprisoned 1970. Paraguay, Pablo Maria Angelo Guanes, one of 5 in public conscientious objector presentation, September 1993. Philippines, Lagman, objected 1966. Poland, Darlus Maciek, imprisoned 1 year, 1993. Portugal, Paulo Milhomens de Matros, objected 1977. Puerto Rico, Philip Howard, arrested 1949. Rhodesia, Richard Knottenbelt, imprisoned 5 months, 1977. Roman Empire, Maximilianus, beheaded, Trevesta, North Africa, 12th of March, the year 295. Romania, Alexandru Tion, 5 sentences of 2 years each, 1920s. Russia, Vadim Nazarov, imprisoned 12 months in 1998.
Serbia and Montenegro, Jagoslav Dokic, objected, 2005. Serbia, Kosovo, Agron Kurzhaj, resisted Serbian call-up 1990 and pressure to join KLO in 1998. Singapore, Nagai, Siu Chiat, second sentence of 2 years military detention, 1997. Slovakia, Martin Bednar, imprisoned 1 year in 1997. Somalia, Saeed Mohammed, imprisoned 1984. South Africa, Richard Steele, imprisoned 1 year, 1980. Southwest Africa, Rashid Ruinazi, refused 1987. Spain, Jose Luis Pepe Puenza, imprisoned 1971. Spain, the Basque Country, Alberto Estefania, imprisoned 4 months in 2000. Spain, Canary Islands, Rafael Vallejon, imprisoned 1 year, 1993. Spain, Catalonia, Francesco Montenegro, imprisoned 2 years, 5 months and 1 day in 1995. Sweden, Per Johannes Klasse, Alternative Service, 1980s. Switzerland, Joseph Bentz, imprisoned 1950. Taiwan, Shi Ming-tae, imprisoned 1986. Thailand, Kuhn Netiwit Shoti Fat Faisal, declared himself a CO June 2016. Turkey, Mehmet Bal, military detention 2002. Turkmenistan, Kervin Zakirov, sentenced to 9 years in labor colony 1999. Ukraine, Glebo Melchev, sought conscientious objector asylum in Latvia 1993. USA, Cyrus Guernsey Pringle, drafted into the Union Army, held in guardroom, but eventually freed in 1863. USSR, Chechnya, Anatoly Zuk, detained in psychiatric hospital, 1988. USSR, Estonia, Erkki Luik, first political CO, 18 months forced labour, 1989. USSR, Kyrgyzstan, Andrei Bill, imprisoned 1984. USSR, Moldova, Nikolai Ryzhkov, imprisoned 1986. USSR, Russia, Dmitry Argonov, distributed leaflets explaining objection, 1985. USSR, Ukraine, Sergei Osnach, 18 months forced labour, 1991. Venezuela, Rafael Uzcategui, objected, 1990s. Yugoslavia, former, Ljubomir Petric, imprisoned 8 years in 1963. Yugoslavia, latter, Bojan Aleksov, discharged from army as mentally unstable after refusing to recite civil war in 1991.
Thank you. We will now join together for 1 minute silence. Thank you. The organisation Fellowship of Reconciliation, Humanists UK, Movement for the Abolition of War, Network for Peace, Pax Christi, Peace News, Peace Pledge Union, Quaker Peace and Social Witness, Right to Refuse to Kill, and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. These organisations would really appreciate your support. A list of their websites will be shared at the end of the ceremony. Other events to mark International Conscientious Objectors Day. There is an online vigil in Scotland at 5:30 p.m. today, and an online event in Leicester, All Voices for Peace, at 6 p.m. today. Details can be found on the webpage for International Conscientious Objectors Day. Jeff Tibbs from the Peace Pledge Union is going to share with us some other things we can do.
Thank you. As Karen has said, 12 organisations have come together to hold this event, and collectively we've also put together a new web page with lots of ideas on it for how you can show your support for conscientious objectors, as well as many resources in case you want to explore this subject further. The web page is available at other times of year, of course, not just today, and we'll continue to update it, so I really encourage you to have a look. The address is co-day.org, and I'd like to mention just a couple of the ways you can show your support. We're encouraging people to donate to help to establish a new memorial called the Opposing War Memorial to Conscientious Objectors, which will be in Princes Street Gardens in Edinburgh. This is an initiative by the Edinburgh Peace and Justice Centre. And online you can find some extraordinary designs and a video about how this memorial will look. They're looking for donations now, so I really encourage you to go and support that project. I'd also like to mention War Resisters International, who are collaborating this year with Connection EV. They're releasing a series of videos on YouTube throughout the day today from conscientious objectors, as well as video messages from their supporters. So have a look at their channel, which I think they'll be updating right now. In terms of the resources on the webpage, just to mention a couple, there are in-depth historical resources, such as The Men Who Said No, which looks at the experiences of First World War conscientious objectors. There are also educational resources aimed at various age groups. And there are videos, including documentaries about the experiences of conscientious objectors in the UK. And lastly, there are articles which look at the history of International Conscientious Objectors Day and the memorial that you saw in Tavistock Square. So one more time, the webpage is co-day.org. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Jeff. And a big thank you to all our contributors and to everyone joining us today. Sue Gilmurray is now going to play us out with her song, Road to Peace.